Picture this. You wake up hungry. No kitchen, no refrigerator, no stove, no pot, no pan, no knife that was made in a factory. No salt, no cooking oil, no seasoning of any kind. The sun just came up and somewhere out there, something that you can eat exists. But it is either still alive and moving, buried underground, hanging from a tree you would need to climb, or sitting inside a shell that will cut your fingers open trying to get to it. This was breakfast for the first 700,000 years of human existence. Not uncomfortable camping breakfast. Not a quirky wellness experiment. Actual, daily, non-negotiable reality for every human and pre-human ancestor who lived before fire became a controlled, reliable tool. Because here is the thing most people don't realize. Fire control, the ability to deliberately start a fire, keep it burning, and use it consistently to cook food, appears in the archaeological record only around 400,000 years ago, and evidence for widespread, habitual fire use is even more recent. Homo sapiens as a species is about 300,000 years old. Our genus Homo goes back nearly 3 million years. That means for the overwhelming majority of our evolutionary history, our ancestors were not cooking anything. They were eating the world raw. And what they were eating, and how their bodies handled it, is one of the strangest and most revealing stories in human biology. Let's be specific, because vague gestures toward our ancestors ate plants and animals doesn't capture what this actually looked like. The diet of pre-fire hominins was not a clean, romanticized paleo plate. It was an opportunistic, seasonal, highly variable collection of whatever was available, edible, and obtainable without getting killed in the process. Plants were the foundation. Early hominins living in the African savanna and woodland environments would have eaten enormous quantities of fibrous plant material. Tubers, the underground storage organs of plants, were particularly important. Tubers are calorie-dense, available year-round, and don't run away. But raw tubers are often hard, tough, and in many cases contain compounds that are genuinely toxic or highly irritating to the digestive system. The cassava that feeds hundreds of millions of people today is, in its raw form, lethally poisonous due to cyanogenic compounds. Pre-fire hominins who ate tubers were working around these issues through peeling, slicing, prolonged chewing, sun-drying, and fermentation, processes that break down harmful compounds without any heat at all. Fruit was the most immediately available and palatable food source, and the evidence from both dental studies and isotope analysis of ancient bones suggests that early hominins ate substantial quantities of it when available. The problem with fruit is seasonality. It doesn't exist in consistent supply, and competing for it with other animals, including other primates who were also after the same food, was a daily reality. Then there was meat. And this is where it gets interesting. Early hominins ate meat long before they could hunt it effectively. The oldest known stone tools, the Oldowan tools found at sites in East Africa dating back 2.6 million years, are butchery tools. Flakes sharp enough to slice through animal hide, used to access the meat and organs of animals. But the animals being processed were not animals these early hominins had killed. They were scavenging, moving into a kill zone after lions or leopards had finished, using their tools to get at the remaining meat and to crack bones for the marrow inside. Bone marrow is one of the most calorie-dense foods that exists in nature. A single large femur from a wildebeest contains enough fat-rich marrow to provide substantial calories. And critically, raw marrow is immediately digestible, unlike raw muscle meat, which is tough, chewy, and requires significant digestive effort to process. The emphasis on marrow access in early hominin tool use is not accidental. It was an extremely efficient caloric strategy. Raw organ meat, liver, kidney, heart, brain, was also highly valued. Organs are far more digestible raw than muscle meat. They are rich in fat-soluble vitamins including A, D, E, and K, as well as B12, zinc, and iron. Arctic explorers in the early 20th century who ate only raw, fresh organ meat survived in excellent health. Those who ate only muscle meat without organs developed serious vitamin deficiencies. Early hominins who scavenged and ate organs were accessing a genuinely nutritious food source, despite eating it without any preparation beyond cutting. Insects deserve special mention. Insects are extraordinarily nutritious, high in protein, fat, and micronutrients, and they are abundant, slow-moving, and easy to obtain. There is strong evidence from primate behavior and from studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies that insect consumption was a significant part of the diet throughout human evolution. Termite mounds, ant colonies, beetle larvae, caterpillars, all of these were and are legitimate nutritious food sources. Raw, no problem. Here is what should genuinely surprise you. The pre-fire human gut was not the same as your gut. Evolution is not slow in all domains. In response to diet, it can move surprisingly fast. And the digestive anatomy of our pre-fire ancestors reflects a fundamentally different dietary reality. The great apes, our closest living relatives, who never developed controlled fire use, have dramatically larger guts relative to their body size than humans do. Gorillas and chimpanzees have enormous large intestines capable of fermenting and extracting nutrients from huge quantities of raw, fibrous plant material through microbial breakdown. This requires a significant portion of the body's energy budget just to run the digestive system, but it allows them to thrive on a diet of raw leaves, stems, bark, and fruit. Humans have dramatically smaller guts. Our large intestines are proportionally much smaller than those of other great apes, and our stomachs are also relatively smaller. The prevailing scientific consensus, developed largely through the work of Harvard primatologist Richard Wrangham, is that the evolution towards smaller guts in the Homo lineage happened as a consequence of cooking. Cooked food, being more digestible and yielding more usable calories per gram, allowed natural selection to reduce the size of the gut over generations. But this creates a fascinating chicken and egg problem. If cooking caused smaller guts, and smaller guts mean we need cooked food to thrive, then how did pre-fire hominins with those transitionally smaller guts manage on a raw diet? The answer appears to be a combination of food processing without heat, slicing, pounding, fermenting, and a dietary profile heavily weighted toward the most calorie-dense, pre-digested, or easily digestible raw foods available: marrow, organs, ripe fruit, insects. Early, transitional hominins were not eating like gorillas. They were already selecting for the most digestible options available to them. There is also the matter of fermentation. Naturally fermented foods, fruits that had begun to break down, meat that had been aging, were not necessarily avoided. Some research suggests that early hominins may have been adapted to consuming mildly fermented foods in ways that modern humans, with our differently calibrated immune systems and gut microbiomes, are not. Fermentation partially breaks down complex carbohydrates and proteins, making them more digestible without heat. It also reduces levels of some naturally occurring toxins in plant foods. The discovery of fire control was the single most transformative event in human dietary history. Not metaphorically, literally. The changes it produced in human biology, social structure, and daily life were so profound that some researchers argue it was more significant than any other single development in our evolutionary history, including the development of language. Cooking does several specific things to food that matter enormously. It breaks down the cell walls of plants, releasing nutrients that would otherwise pass through the gut undigested. It denatures proteins in meat, making them dramatically easier to digest and extract amino acids from. It kills pathogens, bacteria, parasites, and viruses that would otherwise cause illness. It breaks down or neutralizes many of the naturally occurring toxins present in plant foods. And it dramatically increases the caloric yield from a given amount of food by making more of its energy available for absorption. The caloric impact of cooking is staggering. Studies on animals fed cooked versus raw diets of identical composition show that cooked food produces significantly more body weight gain, even when the raw caloric content is identical. The digestive efficiency advantage of cooked food over raw food appears to be roughly 20 to 30% for meat and even higher for starchy foods. This is not a minor upgrade. For a species living on the margin between getting enough calories and not, this difference was potentially the difference between survival and starvation. The time savings were equally important. Chimpanzees spend an enormous percentage of their waking hours chewing. Some estimates put it at over 6 hours per day. This is because raw, fibrous plant food requires extensive mechanical processing before it can be swallowed and digested. Cooked food requires dramatically less chewing. This freed up time, hours per day, that could be redirected toward other activities. Some researchers have proposed that the reduction in chewing time made possible by cooking was a significant factor in the expansion of cognitive activity, social interaction, and ultimately the development of language and culture. Fire also changed where humans could live. Raw food diets are geographically constrained by what grows or lives in a given environment. Cooking dramatically expands the range of foods that are safe and digestible. It opens up root vegetables that would otherwise be toxic. It makes tough seeds digestible. It extends the range of meat consumption by making older, tougher carcasses edible. This dietary flexibility allowed humans to colonize environments that would otherwise have been nutritionally inhospitable. Here is where we land. You are not the same animal your pre-fire ancestors were. You are the product of hundreds of thousands of years of evolution that happened after cooking became a regular feature of daily life. Your jaw is smaller than any pre-fire hominin's jaw. Your gut is proportionally smaller than any other great ape's gut. Your teeth are smaller. Your digestive enzymes are calibrated for cooked starch in ways that other primates are not. Humans have many more copies of the salivary amylase gene, which produces an enzyme that begins breaking down cooked starch in the mouth, than any other primate. You are, in a very literal biological sense, a cooking animal. Not an animal that happens to cook, but an animal whose body has been shaped by cooking over hundreds of thousands of years to the point where raw food alone is a genuinely inadequate diet for modern human physiology. The raw food movements that periodically become popular in industrialized societies are not a return to something natural. They are an attempt to run modern human biology shaped by and for cooked food, on the dietary equivalent of the wrong fuel. Studies of people who eat exclusively raw food diets show consistent patterns of weight loss, reduced reproductive function in women, and vitamin and mineral deficiencies that do not appear in populations eating cooked food. This is not because those people are doing something wrong, it is because their bodies were built for something else. Your pre-fire ancestors ate the world raw and survived. They survived because they were smart, opportunistic, and willing to eat almost anything that provided calories. They survived because their guts were built differently, their food processing techniques were more sophisticated than we give them credit for, and their dietary choices were better calibrated to their biology than any modern raw food experiment. But they also spent enormous amounts of time and energy just getting enough to eat. When fire came, everything changed. The calories got easier, the gut got smaller, the brain got bigger, and somewhere along that chain of cause and effect, something that could read these words eventually appeared. That's all for today. Please donate or subscribe to fund the next video.